Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about sheet music rhythm notation. And when playing music or reading music, it's really important to break down the different components of what you're absorbing in sheet music, because a lot is really thrown at you all at once, and so it's really efficient to break down the elements of sheet music into different components and think about them separately and understand what you need to do separate from the other components, because that will just make your life easier. And I think that rhythm notation is really important to learn, distinct from the pitch notation, because rhythm notation is used in not only standard sheet music, but it's also used in tablature. So hopefully what I aim to convey in this video will be of some use to whoever sees it, for those who are interested in reading music, whether it be tabs or sheet music, because it's really used in both. Another reason why I'm even setting out to make this video is because I was trying to explain the concepts of rhythm notation to a friend today, and I found myself not doing a very good job. Part of that was because I didn't have visuals to help support what I was saying. So thinking about what I wasn't even sure if the person I was explaining to was understanding what I was saying, or I was having trouble even understanding what I was trying to say. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to take a blank piece of sheet music here in a PDF viewer, and I'm going to add my own notation here that is part of standard sheet music notation. You will see parallels between what I show you here and in standard sheet music. Hopefully what I display to you here will be completely translatable to both tabs in sheet music. So let me just start with adding some elements. You don't really need to include a treble clef, but I'm going to include that anyways. And excuse my crude drawings. I know they are terrible, but they don't need to be pretty. So the treble clef isn't actually important when it comes to rhythm. What is important is this. I'm going to put this off of the staff, staff being the set of lines, so that you can read it completely. This is 4 over 4. Okay, there's that. And then I'm going to put a measure line here. A measure line separates one measure from another. So now what this is doing here, this 4 over 4, what this is saying here is that this measure here, this segment right here, this measure, it's going to contain 4 quarter notes, 4 of 1 over 4 basically. So every single one of these measures on here, I haven't drawn more measure lines, but just imagine this page being filled with measures. Every single one of them, all of their notes are going to add up to 4 over 4. Okay, and when I say they're going to add up, I'm talking about their rhythmic values. Now, I started this video on this page here because this displays the notation for different rhythmic values here. Okay, so on this side we have rhythmic values for pitches. I think we'll start here and work our way down. These are very special, these top three. I don't think that as a beginner anyone should start considering these. Okay, these might go over the heads of beginners. Okay, and in fact these are hardly ever seen. You will probably never see these. You might, but with enough practice with these other elements, these will become more clear to you, but you probably won't ever even need to use them. So on our left side here, we have the rhythmic values for pitches or sounds being produced, and then we have rhythmic values for rests or silence. Okay, now after me saying that, you may be wondering, well, why do I need rhythmic values for silence and rhythmic values for pitch? This might seem obvious to you why you might need pitches. Obviously, you're going to be playing music. You want to know when to play what you are playing. But why would you need rhythmic values for silence? Well, going back to what I had said earlier, each measure has to be equal to 4/4. And we have to use these things to make a measure equal 4/4. So if I have a pitch that only lasts for the first beat of a measure, and I'll explain what beats are in a second. If I'm only going to play a note on, let's say, the first beat of the measure, and I want silence throughout the rest of it, I still have to maintain the measure equaling 4/4, while at the same time signifying that that pitch I'm going to play is only going to be on the first beat here. So in time signatures of 4/4 in the measure, not only does it mean that a measure is going to contain 4 quarter notes, but that literally means that this top number is the number of beats in here. And for each beat, you have a quarter note. So really what's going on here is when we're counting the beats, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And after you count 4 into this measure, you go into the next measure and the next measure and so on. The speed at which you do this counting of 4/4 is usually written in the sheet music. It usually has a quarter note symbol like this with an equal sign. So it'll probably look like this. Again, forgive my very crude drawings. And an equal sign here. And then it'll give you, like, let's say 120. It put a number value on the right of that equal sign. Okay? And all that's saying is that the tempo is at 120 beats per minute. For beginner musicians, this is moderately fast. It's close to 128, and 128 is a typical BPM for dance music. So it's moderately fast. So let's sort of talk about these and putting them into use and giving you an idea of what these might sound like. So why don't we start with the whole note pitch? Now, depending on where I put this on the staff vertically determines the pitch, but we're not going to talk about pitch right now. We don't want to think about pitch. Remember, we're trying to break up these different elements in the sheet music so that they're easier to understand. And pitch is going to be a totally different topic. Right now, all we're talking about is rhythm. So let's just put in a whole note here. In fact, it doesn't even really matter where I put this whole note on here horizontally, just so long as there's a whole note in here. So there's our whole note. So really what this is saying is that whatever pitch we're playing as a whole note here, it is going to be played for the entirety of the measure. You can think of a whole note as 1 over 1. And 1 over 1 is equal to 4 over 4. I suppose I could have just said this, but for the sake of, I don't know, you're understanding it, I guess? Whole note. This will be a whole note. Not a zero. That's not a zero. That's a whole note. So really what's going on here is that this pitch, whatever this pitch is, rhythmically is played for all 4 beats. So if I was counting 4 over 4, or a measure of 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. To give you an idea of the duration, I will keep track with the count with my hand clapping, and then I will vocalize a pitch for this whole note's duration. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the pitch is being played over all 4 beats. Now, I'm going to demonstrate something similar to this, but is distinct and will incorporate quarter notes. So taking this whole note, which is basically equal to the full measure here, I'm going to take this whole note and essentially I'm going to break it into fourths. So break it into fourths using quarter notes. So let's come here, let's look at what our quarter notes look like. So we've got a quarter note for pitch, okay, and we have a quarter note for silence, okay. So in the previous example, our whole note started on the first beat and that pitch lasted for the entire measure, right? Well, so now what happens if I take a quarter note here, a fourth of a whole note, okay, let's make this quarter note here, all right? And let's do a quarter rest. Ooh, this is going to be really tricky for me to write here on a trackpad for a laptop. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to make that accurately. So why don't I make some attempt at this here? So remember, this measure has to be equal to 4 over 4. This is a quarter note. And a quarter note is equal to 1 over 4. So I have to make the requirement, or I have to meet the requirement. This is a 4, okay. Ah, so ugly. So a quarter note is equal to 1 over 4, but I have to meet the requirement of a measure equaling 4 over 4. That's why I have to use these rests here, because these rests here are also equal to 1 over 4. So I need to include 3 more of these rests. So I'm writing in 3 rests. Again, please, I do apologize for these crude drawings. They are hurting my eyes probably more than yours. God, wow. Okay. Okay, great. So now we've met this requirement of the notes having to equal 4 over 4. Now, from my first example, recall that the whole note spanned over the entire length of the measure because it was equal to 4 over 4. This note is only equal to 1 over 4, the quarter note. So what's going to happen here is that this note is going to be played for the duration of the first beat, and then there will be silence for the remaining 3 beats. So again, I'm going to count the measure with my hands, representing the beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to vocalize this pitch here. Just a random pitch. This is only for the sake of rhythm once again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, 2, 3, 4. Ah, 2, 3, 4. Ah, 2, 3, 4. So see how that works? These guys have values that occupy the spaces in the measure, and they need to be added up so that they equal 4/4. It's always going to meet this requirement. If it doesn't, if these notes in here, if there's a combination of these notes in here that don't equal 4/4, something is going to be very wrong here. Because if, let's say, you count up these notes here, these values here of these rhythmic notes, and they exceed 4/4, basically they're drifting over into the next measure. They're going to be overlapping with the next measure, and that's just not going to make any sense at all. So rhythm is really telling you when to play something and how long to play it for. Now, how about I use these elements here to write something different? Let me conclude that thought there. Let me show you what else I can do with just these elements alone that I just used. So let's say, I made this, why is this not erasing? What's going on here? There it goes. So I wrote this using a quarter note and 3 quarter note rests, with that quarter note being played first. What if I did this? What if I did 3 rests to start with, and I did the quarter note? Oh my God, that's so ugly. What if I put the quarter note on the end? Still equals 4/4, because you got 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, all added together, 4/4. You've met your requirement. This will work. Essentially, that pitch is just tagged is on the 4th beat rather than the 1st beat, right? So if I had this quarter note here, it'd be on the 3rd beat. If I had this quarter note here, it'd be on the 2nd beat. Okay, so again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, ah, 1, 2, 3, ah, 1, 2, 3, ah. So really, this placement, that the way these are arranged is also determining where this pitch is on the beats. Now let's do some even further division, because really, hopefully you've come to this conclusion already, but if you haven't, it's totally okay. What we're really getting at here is that this whole note here that spanned the entire duration can be divided up into fourths. It could be divided up into halves. This is a half note. I could have, instead of dividing this measure up into fourths, I could have divided this measure up into halves, to 2 halves. 2 halves is equal to 1/1. And, excuse me, 2 halves is equal to 2/2. 2/2 is equal to 1/1. 1/1 is equal to 4/4. So I could have done 2 halves in here. But because I'm counting in fours, I figured it'd be better to just jump over to quarters and just lay them over the beats of the measure. Now, I segmented what I was saying earlier. I went on, I segued into something else, but what I was saying was that these measures can be divided up infinitely. We took this whole note, we could divide it up into halves. We ended up dividing it up into fourths. We could divide it up into eighths. We could divide it up into 16ths. We could divide it up into 32nds. We could divide it up into 64ths. We could have divided it up into 128ths. But that would be so ridiculously fast. Playing this at 120 beats per minute and playing 128th notes, it would be incomprehensible. It's not really fathomable unless you were playing at, like, I don't know, 8 beats per minute or something remarkably low. So let me just show you an example of, let's see here. And this is what's going, 128th notes. You won't see this very often in sheet music. In fact, you probably never will. These probably just serve as examples of how deeply you can divide these measures, because really you can divide them infinitely if you really want. But just think, you're essentially taking one, you're separating it into 2 halves. You're taking 2 halves, you're separating them into fourths. You're taking 4 fourths, you're separating them into 8 eighths. So you're just constantly dividing by 2 is what's going on here. That is what you have at your disposal. You can constantly divide 2 and occupy measures with pitch and silence, or sound and silence. Okay, so maybe I'll just do one more example here. Why don't we do a measure containing, well, actually, perhaps maybe I've covered enough on this sort of division of rhythm in this time signature. Maybe I should show you another time signature. If you have any more questions about this and you are watching this video and you're curious, you can either ask me questions in my comments, shoot me a DM, or refer to musictheory.net. Musictheory.net is an extremely powerful tool. It's how I learned music theory. It's how I learned music notation and sheet music, along with Wikipedia and these symbols, because this Wikipedia page will basically give you an amazing wealth of notation knowledge. I'm just covering the rhythm here, but there's all sorts of different things. This refers to pitch, and there's a bit that comes along with these specifically. But that is a topic, again, referring to pitch here, topic for another day. This is what I wanted to show you now. So, here, so 4/4 is a very common time signature. It's probably one of the more common time signatures, but what's next to 4/4 is 3. I guess I could have used typed text here, but ignore that. So in the previous example, we had 4/4. So 4 beats, or measures consisting of 4 quarter notes. Okay. A whole note is equal to 4 quarter notes, because 4 quarter notes is 4/4, right? Well, so here we now have measures consisting of 3 quarter notes, or 3 beats consisting of 4 quarter notes. So now this is a little bit different, because previously 4/4 is equal to 1/1, right? Well, so now we can't actually write a whole note in here, because again, that would drift over into the next measure, right? We would have, if we used a whole note here, 3 out of these 4 quarter notes would be played in this measure right here, right? But then there's an extra quarter note that's right outside. It's on the first beat of the next measure. So we can't really use a whole note there. We could do a half note with the quarter notes, right? We could do a half note here. That's kind of a good way of writing this, I think. Do a little swirl and go up. Right? We'll fill this in. Okay, right? Right? Because a half note is equal to 2 quarter notes, right? And a quarter note is just 1 over 4. So basically we have 1 over 2, which is equal to 2 over 4, plus 1 over 4. So 3 over 4. So we've met our requirement here. Okay? And so this guy right here, if I was going to sound this out here, so again, 3 over 4, 3 beats per measure, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, okay? And I'm vocalizing the pitches that match this. Basically, my first vocalization will stretch over the first 2 beats, and then I will pause briefly and play this second pitch, only to demonstrate, because there is no difference in pitch here, this is just a rhythmic demonstration. I basically pause this pitch very briefly usually this might be a different pitch. Otherwise, I wouldn't even take a brief moment to pause. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to take a brief moment to pause as this stretches over the first 2 beats, and then I'm going to vocalize on the 3rd beat. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I had to slow down there, but you get the idea. The first vocalization goes over the 2 beats, right? Because this is equal to 2 over 4. And then this vocalization just goes over the 3rd beat because this is equal to 1 over 4. Okay? And I can use the equivalence in rests to essentially experiment with when these pitches are played within the measure. So I hope that this video at least gave you a starting point, or maybe some insight, or maybe just some supplemental information to maybe explain some things that aren't clear to you. I do highly encourage taking a look at musictheory.net. I highly recommend this website. I stand by this. Since I started learning music, I have always recommended this website to people because it is free. It's very concise, and it's got so many different tools in here that will help you as a musician. It will help train. Where is it? Let's come here. Okay, right. So note duration. See, they'll explain everything I just explained here. They'll talk about restorations. They'll explain sheet music to you here. Once you kind of, I don't know that I would. If you want to learn sheet music and how to read sheet music, these are really great to start with. If you want to learn how to improvise and just make music without reading sheet music, I would highly recommend starting here. Start on the major scale and start on the minor scale, because what this is going to do for you is it's really going to teach you why certain notes sound good together. Okay, it's going to teach you how to harmonize notes, or how to, if you're given maybe like a singular pitch, okay, it will show you how to figure out what pitches will go well together. Let's see what they give us on the first page. Okay, so this is that they'll basically walk you through this step by step. But essentially, to make this very brief and concise, because I'm about to wrap up the video here, is that music is not about specific pitches that you're playing. What builds music, okay, what makes things sound good is distances between the pitches, not exactly the pitches themselves. So this is not an interactive keyboard. But so let's say I just picked a note, okay? Let's say I picked this note right here. Okay, this note happens to be C. Okay, and if you'll notice this pattern in this keyboard, this note is also C because it mirrors, okay, this little section here. You see these two black keys here? This note right here is exactly identical to this note right here. It's right left to these black keys right here, right? So these notes here are identical. They are the exact same pitch name. They have the same name. But so how do we figure out what notes will go well with this note? Well, it actually turns out that there is a formula that you can use, a formula consisting of distances between these pitches from these two identical notes. And you can pick out any of these notes here. You'll notice that this pitch here, or this note, or this key, is identical to this key, right? Okay, and there's these formulas called scales that are composed of these different length of jumps, whole steps, and half steps. Okay, you'll learn about those in this lesson here if you go through it. Okay, and really to pick out the notes that will go well with any given note you pick, whether it's, you know, this note right here and its mirrored neighbor, or this note right here and its mirrored neighbor. Okay, there's a sequence of jumps, okay, like a whole step, which is two notes, you know, 1, 2, okay. Another whole step, 1, 2, half step, one jump, whole step, 1, 2, whole step, 1, 2, whole step, 1, 2, and half step. So using this formula, and I didn't explain it in full length, but using this formula here, there are notes that will harmonize or go well with this note. And that's all explained in here. I know I explained all that very briefly and very quickly, so it probably didn't make a lot of sense, but try to think about what I said and go through this lesson here, the major scale on musictheory.net, and it will basically teach you how to figure out what notes harmonize with other notes. So really, I mean, you could sit down at a piano and you could just hit these notes that fall in within this formula for any given note that you pick, and it'll just sound good. It will just sound good, and you don't have to really even give it that much thought. It just works. So I seriously recommend checking this out, the major scale on musictheory.net. It will basically teach you just how to start making music. And you don't even have to think about sheet music and rhythm notation and pitch notation. But I will probably explain these things in a later video. I will probably make a video expanding on what I've explained in this video for clarification. So yeah, thank you for watching.